Mind. And now, your host, Congressman Ed Towns.
Welcome to News and Views. We're delighted today to have with us Congresswoman Barbara Lee of California. And we're going to talk a lot today about women's issues, and especially Shirley Chisholm, because this is March, and March, when that's the time that we refer to it as Women's History Month. Welcome, Barbara Lee.
Well, Congressman Towns, let me say it's really an honor to be with you. I remember being with you in your district as we honored Congresswoman Shirley Chisholm's legacy several years ago. And just say to you that I'm very proud to be your colleague, and also proud of the fact that you're a minister also. We need some of that spirit, and Lord knows we need a lot of prayers here, and so it really, you bring so much to this body.
I appreciate your kind words. And let me just say that this is March, which is referred to as Women's History Month. And you have been doing so much in terms of keeping not only the name in terms of Shirley Chisholm alive, but you've done some magnificent things by having her portrait hung in the Capitol. I mean, I think that within itself is just unbelievable. Every time I walk by there, I look at it, and I'm just reminded of the days that I, worked with Shirley.
Well, thank you for raising that. And let me say, did you see the spot where we hung that?
Right.
In the Capitol? I mean, it is there.
Yeah, I've been by there. I've been by 5 times just looking at it.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
And it's just such an honor and a privilege to be able to pay tribute to a woman. This is just something small that we did to honor a woman who really changed the course of the country in terms of politics. If it had not been for Shirley Chisholm running for president in the early 70s, there would not have been an effort by Jesse Jackson in 84 and 88. Had it not been for Congresswoman Shirley Chisholm to run for president in 72, I would say that it would have been a bit more difficult for Barack Obama to have won the election. And so she paved the way for so many of us. She was a catalyst for change. She was unbought and unbossed. And I have to say that she actually encouraged me to register to vote. And I became involved in politics as a result of her mentoring and her encouragement. And she became my friend, my mentor, and she really helped me in all of my elections. And I miss her tremendously. And I have to just say to your constituents, I have to thank them for Shirley Chisholm. I have to thank them for you, for Congresswoman Clark, because it's that spirit and it's that understanding of what coalition politics means. It's that understanding of what we need to do to change the face of America that really comes in many respects from communities such as yours in your congressional districts. I have to thank you.
Thank you so much, and I really, really appreciate your kind words. But let me just ask you a couple of things. First of all, out of all the places in the Capitol, you picked probably the best location that anybody could choose to place her portrait. I mean, every time I walk to go to speak to the majority leader, if I go to a meeting with the chairman, I don't care where you go, you have to pass that particular location. Barbara, how'd you do it?
Well, let me say, it took all of us to do this, and I have to say that our great speaker, Nancy Pelosi, was very instrumental. We have many women, African-American women, who are in leadership positions here. And there were people behind the scenes who said, this is where this is going to be. And that's what happened. And I tell you, there was in Shirley's spirit that allowed it to be placed in such a prominent place. When you look at who helped, who engaged in the dialogue and the negotiations, and when you really look at how all this got started, and I can remember our beloved Congresswoman Juanita Millender McDonald, when, and she passed several years ago, but she was the ranking member of the House Administration Committee, and we talked and we said, this is going to be something we're going to do, and it's a tribute to her also in terms of her legacy to really get this going. But, where else should Shirley Chisholm be placed, except in a corridor where the people of the United States could recognize her and honor her, and I think it's a spectacular spot. And it took that Shirley Chisholm tenacity by a lot of people to get it done.
Yeah. Let me just say one other thing here before we move any further, that, I'm a Phi Beta Sigma fraternity man, but I must admit that when I went in and I saw all those deltas who were there paying tribute to Shirley Chisholm, and how you'd organized that event, and how people from across this country came to salute Shirley Chisholm. I mean, that to me was a very moving experience. And I want you to know that I was here when we only had one black member of the, female member of the Congressional Black Caucus. And that was a woman by the name of Cardis Collins. And to watch all the Congressional Black Caucus women in that room that day, that was a moving experience. And I want to just congratulate you, right? I mean, because without you, that would have never happened. How'd you do it?
Yeah, you know, it's just, we have to do the right thing. I mean, this woman, Congresswoman Shirley Chisholm, is an icon, and she has not been given the credit that she deserves. And so I said from day one that I was going to do anything I could do to make sure she receives the recognition that she deserved. And this just had to do with planning. This is Women's History Month. We organized. We knew when Delta Day was. We contacted the Deltas. And of course, Shirley was a proud Delta. And we just kind of, as African-American women do, you know, we just put it all together, and our speaker was tremendous in her assistance. And you know, I think it's important to keep her legacy, Shirley's legacy, alive. In my district, for instance, we have a scholarship fund. We've sent several kids through college as a result of the Shirley Chisholm Scholarship Fund.
Well, you have a Shirley Chisholm Scholarship Fund in your district?
In my district, oh yes. And we're working on a Shirley Chisholm stamp, a postal stamp. I think we need a stamp for Shirley Chisholm. And so I think as the first African-American woman of Congress who, first of all, was against the Vietnam War, she spoke fluent Spanish, she was the daughter of immigrants. She understood the effects of poverty and why poverty needed to be eradicated. You know, many of the issues that Shirley Chisholm addressed during her time on this earth are issues that we're still addressing, and she paved the way for all of us to be here. She was on the Rules Committee. I can remember she was the only woman, the only African-American on the Rules Committee. Shirley Chisholm worked in a bipartisan way. You know, bipartisanship people think is a new thing. Way back when, Shirley Chisholm went to see George Wallace. You remember when he was shot? And we were really critical. And I was down in Selma, Montgomery, and Birmingham over the weekend. George Wallace's daughter introduced Eric Holder, our Attorney General. And Shirley Chisholm had the nerve and the compassion way back then to go visit with George Wallace. And so when you think about this woman, what else, you know, this is insignificant what we're doing. We have to do bigger and better things to honor Shirley Chisholm. And finally, let me just say, when she was alive, I authored an amendment, a resolution on the floor, laying out her legacy and paying tribute to her. No one had ever introduced a resolution honoring her. So I said, I'm going to do this. And all of us co-sponsored that resolution. Got on the floor, and it was on the suspension calendar, which meant we didn't have to have a roll call vote because the Republicans and Democrats agreed to it. Well, I called her. She was in Florida, and I said, Shirley, listen, we're getting ready to debate this resolution. And she was just overwhelmed. She said, what, a tribute to me? She said, okay. And she turned on the TV. She called some of her friends. And I went back and said, you watching, you know. There weren't a lot of members on the floor, you know, on a Monday afternoon, not too many members. She said, Barbara, it's beautiful, it's great, but I'm really a little upset about something. I said, what? She says, where are the Republicans? She said, I worked with so many Republicans. She said, has the House degenerated or disintegrated into this where it's so partisan? She said, there's only Connie Morella down there. She said, I have many friends on the Republican side. I said, Shirley, you know, this is Monday afternoon. People are just coming back in town. I said, but they support this resolution. But I could sense in her voice she was disappointed. And so I said, you know what I'm going to do? Instead of letting this pass on a roll call vote, I said, I'm going to, on a voice vote, I said, I'm going to call a roll call vote. So after we finished the honor and the tribute, rather than let it go off the floor, I called for a roll call vote. And so that meant that we all had to punch our buttons and vote. And so everyone, there were 100% green lights up there, no red lights. I ran back and I told her, I called her back. I said, you see, the Republicans do support you. They do remember you. And she was so happy that she had that bipartisan support on that resolution.
Yeah. I know that you followed her all the way into it. I never forget that even at her funeral in Palm Coast, Florida. I mean, you came all the way from California to Palm Coast to be at Shirley Chisholm's funeral. And I'll never forget that. I mean, and I had an opportunity that day to speak on behalf of the Congressional Black Caucus. In fact,